The Cold War. Yes, that delightful period of history when the world's two biggest superpowers decided to have a staring contest for 50 years, with the minor detail that both were holding planet-destroying buttons under their desks. It was a time of profound, almost comical paranoia. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in an espionage arms race, a frantic scramble for any conceivable advantage. They weren't just building bigger bombs, they were building weirder gadgets. Exploding cigars, shoe-heeled transmitters, lipstick pistols. It was as if James Bond's Q branch had been given an unlimited budget and a severe case of the jitters. The driving fear was that the other side was listening, always listening, from anywhere and everywhere. In this high-stakes, low-trust environment, the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, became obsessed with finding the next great surveillance tool. They needed to get eyes and ears into places that were seemingly impenetrable: embassies, secret meeting rooms, park benches where grim-faced men in trench coats exchanged briefcases. The problem was that microphones, even the small ones, were still clunky and suspicious. You couldn't just leave one on a windowsill in the Kremlin and hope for the best. So, the brilliant minds at the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology started thinking outside the box. And then, apparently, they looked out the window, saw an animal, and had a terrible, wonderful idea. Why not turn living creatures into spies? The logic, if you can call it that, was surprisingly straightforward. Pigeons could fly over sensitive sites, dolphins could be trained for underwater missions, but for the cozy, intimate settings of espionage, what was more innocuous than a cat? Cats are everywhere. They wander into alleys, they nap on park benches, they stroll past embassies without anyone batting an eye. They are the masters of blending in, of being present but ignored. A cat could, in theory, saunter right up to a pair of Soviet diplomats discussing state secrets and just sit there. No one would shoo it away. No one would suspect it was anything more than a simple feline looking for a patch of sun or a friendly scratch behind the ears. It was the perfect cover. And so, from the depths of Cold War anxiety and creative desperation, an idea was born. So audacious, so scientifically ambitious, so profoundly, deeply silly that it could only have come from a government agency with too much money and not enough common sense. They weren't just going to train a cat. Oh no, that would be far too simple. They were going to build a better cat, a bionic cat. A cyborg cat spy that would be the pinnacle of covert listening technology. They were going to wire a cat for sound, turning an innocent fluff ball into a four-legged fur-covered listening device. The project had a name, and it was as beautifully absurd as the concept itself: Acoustic Kitty. Once the CIA greenlit this feline fantasy, the real work began. And by real work, I mean the genuinely unsettling process of turning a living animal into a piece of high-tech surveillance equipment. This wasn't a matter of strapping a backpack onto a cat. This was surgical. Microphone implanted in the ear canal. Small radio transmitter at the base of the skull. Antenna. A thin wire woven along the spine and down the tail. The procedure was, to put it mildly, complex. It required a team of veterinarians and audio engineers performing a delicate operation that had never been attempted before. They had to figure out how to power the device without constantly needing to change batteries. The solution? They wired the electronics to a battery, implanted inside the cat's chest cavity, small enough not to impede its movement, but powerful enough to sustain short missions. The entire setup was a marvel of 1960s miniaturization, a testament to human ingenuity in the service of a truly bonkers idea. The cat would essentially be a walking, purring bug ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. Of course, surgery was only half the battle. You can't just turn a cat into a cyborg and expect it to follow orders. Cats are not famous for their obedience. Independent, willful creatures. They do what they want, when they want. The CIA seemed to have momentarily forgotten this fundamental truth. So, after the poor creature recovered from its invasive surgery, a new phase of the project began. Training. The goal was to teach the cat to walk short distances and sit near specific targets on command. The training process was an exercise in frustration. The cat would get distracted by, well, everything: a bird, a rustling leaf, an interesting smell, or simply the overwhelming desire to take a nap in a sunbeam. Let's talk about money. Because nothing makes a questionable government project truly spectacular like a jaw-dropping price tag. According to Victor Marchetti, a former CIA officer who wrote about the project, Acoustic Kitty cost the American taxpayer an estimated $20 million. Let's put that in perspective. In the 1960s, $20 million was a colossal sum of money. You could have built a fleet of schools, you could have funded a small space program, you could have bought a lifetime supply of catnip for every feline on the planet. Instead, it was funneled into a single, surgically altered cat. This wasn't just a side project, this was a significant investment. The costs piled up quickly. There was the initial research and development, salaries for veterinarians, surgeons, audio engineers, and animal trainers who spent 5 years on this singular goal. There was the cost of the custom-built miniaturized electronics, the microphone, the transmitter, the battery, and antenna wire, which were cutting-edge technology for the time. Each component had to be designed, prototyped, and tested to ensure it was small enough, durable enough, and crucially, wouldn't just kill the cat. This was bespoke espionage hardware with a bespoke price. The high cost reflected sheer difficulty. The project was plagued by setbacks. The first few surgical attempts were reportedly not successful. They had to solve the battery problem and the hunger problem. Every challenge required more time, more research, and more money. The entire endeavor was a classic sunk cost fallacy. They'd spent so much they felt compelled to keep going, convinced success was just one more tweak away. Think about the sheer audacity of it. Someone in power repeatedly approved the budget. Year after year, they reviewed mounting bills for feline modification and behavioral guidance systems and said, yes, this seems like a prudent use of national security funds. It's a testament to the anything-goes Cold War atmosphere. In the desperate race against the Soviets, no idea was too strange, no expense too great. The $20 million cat stands as a monument to that era, a furry, four-legged symbol of how fear can make people do very, very weird things with a very, very large amount of money. After 5 long years of research, development, surgery, and a whole lot of frustrating training sessions, the day finally arrived. The year was 1966. Project Acoustic Kitty was ready for its first official field test. The team had their operative, a female gray and white cat, now a sophisticated listening device worth more than a luxury home. They had their technology, tiny espionage electronics built into the cat. They had their target, 2 men on a park bench in Washington, D.C. The pressure was immense. The careers of those involved, and a significant chunk of the CIA's research and development budget, were riding on this mission. The plan was elegant on paper. The team drove to a park in Washington, D.C., their target, 2 men sitting on a bench, deep in conversation. The cat's mission, be released from a van, walk to the bench, sit nearby, and transmit the conversation. This was the culmination, the final exam for a $20 million prodigy. The agents in the van checked their equipment one last time. The receiver was on, tuned, hearing faint static. They opened the van door and gently placed the surgically enhanced spy cat on the pavement. For a brief moment, it seemed like it might work. The cat stood, looked around, glanced toward the bench. The agents held their breath, hands hovering over the recording gear. This single moment represented thousands of hours of work, countless ethical quandaries, and, honestly, a mountain of cash. The agents were on the verge of proving a wild hypothesis, that a cat could be the perfect spy. All the cat had to do was walk across a small patch of grass. It was a simple task they had practiced over and over. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, a lot. The moment the CIA operatives released their feline agent onto the street, they lost all control of the situation. The cat, now free from the van and the laboratory, did what any normal cat would do. It took one look at the mission objective, the 2 men on the park bench, and completely ignored it. All the training, all the audio cues, all the attempts to bend its feline will evaporated in an instant. The cat was its own agent now. It had other priorities. Instead of trotting obediently toward the bench, the cat wandered out into the middle of the street. Maybe it saw something more interesting on the other side. Maybe it was just enjoying its newfound freedom. We'll never really know what was going through its tiny, electronically enhanced head. The agents in the van watched in horror. Their multi-million-dollar asset strolled nonchalantly into oncoming traffic. A taxicab, moving at a perfectly normal speed, came down the street. The driver probably didn't even see the cat. There was a sickeningly quick, unceremonious thud, and just like that, the first and only field mission of Project Acoustic Kitty came to an abrupt, tragic, and honestly, darkly comical end. The world's most advanced feline spy was neutralized not by a KGB counterintelligence agent, but by a Washington, D.C. taxi. The mission lasted less than 5 minutes. The total intelligence gathered was 0. The project was, quite literally, dead on arrival. The agents in the van were left to stare in stunned silence. Their $20 million investment, their 5 years of work, their hopes of revolutionizing espionage, were all gone in a flash of yellow paint and screeching tires. There was nothing to do but pack up their equipment and report the catastrophic failure to their superiors. Now, there is a slight variation to this story that offers a sliver of hope. though it does little to salvage the project's dignity. Some sources, including the declassified CIA memo itself, suggest the cat wasn't actually killed. In this version, the cat wandered into the street, the taxi swerved, missed it, and the terrified feline bolted and was never seen again. Honestly, it's hard to say which outcome is more embarrassing for the CIA. Is it worse that their spy was instantly flattened, or that it simply ran away at the first opportunity, taking $20 million of classified technology with it to go live in an alley somewhere? Either way, the result was the same. The mission was a total failure. Regardless of the cat's ultimate fate, the project was cancelled immediately. The CIA, faced with the undeniable, catastrophic failure of the field test, pulled the plug. The official memo from 1967 concludes with a wonderfully bureaucratic assessment. It notes that, while the scientific work had been a success, they could indeed build a cyborg cat, the project was not practical for real-world use. The researchers found that the environmental factors, the security factors, and using this technique in a real foreign situation force us to conclude that for our purposes, it would not be practical. If you're enjoying this, do us a favor. Hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe. It helps us keep digging. Unchecked power, unlimited funds, a healthy dose of paranoia collide. A masterpiece of flawed logic, a symphony of poor judgment, and it only gets better from here. This is the government equivalent of saying, the operation was a success, but the patient died. The memo goes on to state that the program's unpredictability was its fatal flaw. In a stunning moment of self-awareness, the document admits that the very nature of a cat, the thing that made it seem like a good spy in the first place, was exactly what made it a terrible spy. So what is the legacy of this furry fiasco? On one level, Acoustic Kitty is just a funny story, a bit of historical trivia, perfect for a pub quiz. It's the ultimate example of government waste, a punchline about spies and their crazy gadgets, but it's also more than that. The story is a powerful reminder of the sheer intensity and paranoia of the Cold War. It shows the desperate need for an edge over the enemy that could lead intelligent, serious people to approve a project that, in hindsight, seems insane. It's a window into a mindset where no idea was off the table. The tale of Acoustic Kitty has become a legend in the world of intelligence and beyond. It's often cited as one of the most bizarre and ill-conceived espionage projects of all time. Before we get to the final verdict on this whole strange saga, I want to ask you to do one more thing. If you've enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We dive into stories like this all the time, and you won't want to miss what we uncover next. Your support helps us keep the lights on and the declassified documents flowing. This story is a perfect example of hidden history that's just too good not to share. A testament to the strange things that happen when ambition outpaces common sense. It demonstrates the massive gap between a clever idea in a lab and practical application in the messy, unpredictable real world. Technology can be controlled, but living creatures, especially cats, cannot. They have their own agendas, and those agendas rarely involve risking one of their 9 lives for national security. The project failed because it fundamentally misunderstood its own primary asset. Ultimately, Acoustic Kitty is more than just a failure. It's a legend. It's a story that captures the imagination because it's so perfectly absurd. A cyborg spy cat. It sounds like something out of a children's cartoon or a satirical spy movie, yet it was real. In the end, Project Acoustic Kitty stands alone. One of the weirdest, most wonderfully misguided chapters in the history of espionage. It is a story that has everything: Cold War paranoia, mad science, government bureaucracy, a cat who just wanted to be a cat. Incredible technological ambition meets the stubborn, untamable nature of a house pet. The project meant to be the CIA's secret weapon became an embarrassing secret, a multi-million-dollar folly producing only a tragic anecdote and a declassified memo that reads like a comedy script. The story proves a timeless truth. The simplest solution is often best. Complex, expensive, technologically advanced, and sometimes just plain dumb. The CIA learned it in the park: microphone in a cat's ear, transmitter in its skull, antenna in its tail, but you can't program its soul. A cat follows its instincts: sunbeam, bowl of food, or straight into an oncoming taxi. No amount of training or tech changes that. A perfect storm of hubris and desperation. Born from a real fear, an enemy who could be anywhere and hear anything. The solution was fantasy, trying to bend nature to war. The tech wasn't terrible for the 1960s, it was remarkable, but the concept was fundamentally flawed. Brilliant on a whiteboard in a sterile lab, it collapsed when it hit the chaos of a real street. Next time you see a cat on the street, spare a thought for its fallen comrade. One small cat, one giant leap of questionable judgment for mankind. A practical failure, but absurdly immortal. Undisputed champion of bizarre spy stories, perfectly ridiculous. The line between top secret intelligence and madness is thinner than a whisker. 10-minute story, every day a new pill of curiosity.